In today's show, are the Trailblazers really, after all this, going to just keep the number 7 overall pick and make that selection on draft night? Plus, some second round names to know as we head in to the 2022 NBA draft. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richman. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen every single day. Start your day listening to Locked On Blazers 5 days a week, free on all platforms. Tell your friends to do the same, and that way, by the time you get to lunch, you'll have something to talk about. We got a lot to talk about today. It is NBA Draft Week. Fun show for you today. We got the latest Blazers scuttlebutt, rumors, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to talk second round targets. I've got 8 names, but the Blazers have a couple second round picks. And these are players, frankly, I like in the second round. I've done my research. I've narrowed it down to 8 possibilities. We will go through all of them. But first, let's talk about that butt that's being scuttled. Reports from ESPN, both Jonathan Givony, NBA draft analyst, and veteran reporter Brian Windhorst, with essentially the same news, the same tales from Rip City. Jonathan Givony on the Low Post, Zach Lowe's podcast, available on all platforms, you know where to find it, it's reported that it's like in the last hour of the show that released on Tuesday, January 21st, if you want to go listen to it. But that the Blazers are, the latest whispers coming out of Portland, that the Blazers are going to keep their pick and that they would prefer to draft Shaedon Sharpe if he's available. That's who they got their eye on. Brian Windhorst, in a television hit, like in a hit on ESPN, a TV hit on ESPN, said the same thing, that the Blazers are who are long rumored to be shopping their pick, the latest seems to be that they are comfortable keeping their pick. They're not going to trade back, trade down. They're just going to stay at 7, and their eyes are on Shaedon Sharpe, the guard from Kentucky, wing, 6'6", wing-ish from Kentucky. Oh. Okay, then. What does this mean? Well, with all of this stuff, I have encouraged you, dear listener, to think about why the news would be there. And I think with this one, this is a real media literacy test. And I want to be clear. Brian Windhorst is a veteran reporter who's broke a whole bunch of news in his life. Darn good at it, super plugged in. Nailed the Ben Simmons trade this year, was on the Ben Simmons, James Harden swap when even his colleagues, even Adrian Wojnarowski was not. Wendy had it. Wendy was there a day early. He had it. Dude knows stuff. Dude's plugged in. As plugged in as they come. He's maybe not as Twitter happy, but he's, so he's not sending out tweets, but Wendy's got it. Got the bona fides. Jonathan Givony is as plugged into draft guys there is in the world. Straight up, he's been doing it for, 15 years or something like that. And Draft Express, prior to working at ESPN and Yahoo, was the spot. Jonathan Givony's been that dude. He knows, he is talking to folks around draft time and all year long. I am sure this is what they've heard. I'm not questioning the veracity of the reporting. I am merely saying, after months and months and months, or at least 2 months, two straight months of everybody, including both of those gentlemen, saying that the Blazers were shopping their pick and it was the most likely pick to be moved, and they were the team that was that everyone was active in those trades. 2 days before the draft, it's totally shifted, and everybody's got, and it's clear who they've got their eyes on. To me, this sounds like something that could be a smokescreen. And let me be clear about what I mean by that. There is some value in the world, us, me and you, dear listener, and others out there, believing that the Blazers really do have their eyes on Shaedon Sharpe. And quite frankly, the Blazers might really like Shaedon Sharpe. There's been some reporting, including from Gavoni, that Damian Lillard really likes Shaedon Sharpe. Dame's been at all the draft workouts. There's pictures of him at every single one of them, but specifically at Shaedon Sharpe's workout where he worked out with a group, working with Sharpe a little bit, talking to Sharpe. Portland is certainly interested. They brought him into the facility and they talked to him. And I think Sharpe is a really, really intriguing prospect. In fact, I've said on the podcast, and I'll say again, if he was there, I kind of think the Blazers should just do it, because he's the upside play that could change the course of the franchise, right? Like, if he is, is the number one player in his recruiting class and didn't play a season at Kentucky, but if, the athleticism and the shooting comes around and he is, top 3 pick potential and in other drafts or in another situation where there was just a little more data on him and he didn't kind of avoid the data, then, and you get him at 7, this is, franchise-altering type of talent. I think he's the biggest upside swing of anyone that would be available at that spot. When I was doing my, who should the Blazers draft, I just, kind of thought Sharpe would likely be off the board, but I said it then, I'll say it now. If he's there, I think you take a long and serious look. So it totally makes sense that the Blazers would be interested. That checks out. But it also makes sense that there would be value in the world thinking they were interested for a variety of reasons. One, it puts pressure on teams in front of them to, if Sharpe is their guy, they can't trade back and get him. They got to go ahead and get him at Detroit, Sacramento, Indiana. They have to go ahead and get him. They'll have the opportunity to, but they know that if they do, and if some team wants to wiggle up and trade back, that's the spot. And moreover, teams like OKC, who's sitting at 12, and New York, who's sitting at 11, and Charlotte at 13 and 15, if they are enamored with Sharpe as well, they know that they've got to jump Portland to get there. So it puts pressure on other teams to make moves. In addition, it gives the Blazers some leverage, because if Sharpe's on the board and they're at 7, it is out there in the world that they are totally comfortable with Sharpe, which gives them more leverage when they are talking trades, when they are on the clock, or when they are about to be on the clock. Woj is 4 picks ahead of the actual draft. The NBA is 7 picks of the actual draft. Folks know what's happening. It's moving quickly and really does on draft night. It's why it's really fun. If the word is out there that the Blazers are really, truly totally comfortable taking Shaedon Sharpe because he's their guy, other teams might, if Sharpe is their guy, also might sweeten the pot for trades. There is value in that being out there. There is absolute value in being out there. And quite frankly, I trust the months of reporting versus the days before the draft reporting. This is the time. This 48-hour period is the high time for smoke screens and things everything, like I said on previous podcasts, for everything being true and everything not being true at the same time, for just, stuff being out there and reporters hearing the real word, but that real word being out there for a variety of reasons, because someone wanted it out there. That's what I always want to get across to you when you're thinking about breaking news. Why is this information out there? And specifically with the Blazers, why is this information out there? And I think, there's a variety of reasons it would help Portland, or the simplest read, shout out to Occam's Razor, is that the Blazers like Shaedon Sharpe and they'll take him. And quite frankly, that's fine with me. That would be think it would be a totally reasonable selection. I would be more than comfortable with the Blazers going Sharpe at 7. He doesn't necessarily have a path to playing right away because he's probably a guard early in his career until he fills out a little bit and can play up in the wing. I think he's, at 6'6", I think he can eventually play a little bit of 3 in the league and you can get away with it. But probably early in his career, he just might not have the physicality to play against, larger wings in the league. So that would be tough. And also the Blazers, they're going to have 2 big-minute guards if assuming Anthony Simons is back along with Dame, and then you got to play Josh Hart some minutes. So there's just not a ton of room for Sharpe early in his career. But if you're drafting Sharpe, you're drafting for upside. You're not drafting for this season. You're drafting for future seasons, which, again, this one podcaster is totally in favor of. Patience is the key. It just hasn't been the Blazers' stated goal. And all of the reporting suggests they've been going in the other direction. So be wary of these reports this time of year and ask yourself, why is this information out there? Tomorrow's show, we're going to round up all of this stuff. We're going to do today was supposed to be mock draft day, but I'm going to wait. Tomorrow, you're listening to Wednesday, June 22nd show. Thursday, morning of the draft, the show that comes out morning of the draft. Round up the latest mock drafts, all of the last ones, everyone's final mock draft, and all of the news. We're going to get all of the rumors and just dump them, everything we know. So come back for that one tomorrow. But for the rest of today's show, the Blazers have 2 picks, 36 and 57 in this draft. Let's talk about some second-round names to know. That's what we'll do in the second segment, or just to close the show, final couple segments of the show. But first, let me talk about BetOnline. It is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action, all of it, whatever it might be. You want to bet on the WNBA. You want to bet on MLS action. You want to bet on the NWSL. You want to bet on MMA. You want to bet on tennis. You want to bet on the variety of golf events that all of a sudden are available in North America. It's all there for you. Plus, they got the latest news, so you can become an informed bettor if you go to BetOnline. Bet smarter, win some money. Go take advantage today. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Let's talk some names to know. Blazers have 36 and 57 in the upcoming second round of Thursday night's draft. I think 36 is fun. I think it's fun. I think it's a good and interesting spot to be, because I think there can be. It's really hard to get second rounders who are NBA players, but the Blazers have had a recent track record of being pretty successful there with, your Gary Trent Juniors and your Pat Connaughtons. They have found guys who can contribute in the second round. They have gone and targeted that, and Cronin was part of Joe Cronin was part of the front office that was really good at that. And from everything I know about Joe Cronin, he is super thorough, which means a super thorough, done your homework type GM should excel in the second round. 36 is a fun spot to be. 57, second to last pick in the draft. It's hard. Miami, of course. The two teams lost draft picks. So it's Miami and Chicago. So there's only 58 picks in the draft this year. So 57 is second last pick of the draft. Harder to peg 57. You would assume one of these second round picks probably a two-way guy. And if they keep both, certainly they could sell off one of these picks to a team that doesn't have a second rounder and wants to move in and make their pick. But so most of these guys are going to be available in that 36 range. Like I didn't break them up to 57 and 36. So I'm going to share 8 names with you, and most of them are going to be available in the 36 range or a little bit deeper. Obviously, a couple of them might jump up earlier. I don't claim to know how it's all going to shake out that deep into the draft, but here are some names to know and some names I like. Two that jumped off the board for me are kind of raw offensive players who are really good defensive athletes. That's Kendall Brown, a 6'8 wing from Baylor, and Josh Minott, a 6'8 forward wing from Memphis. Josh Minott didn't really, like, his box score numbers don't really suggest that he's much of an NBA prospect. 6.6 points, 3.8 rebounds, less than an assist, less than a steal, less than a block. But his per minute numbers, his per minute steals and blocks numbers are wild. Like, he came off the bench at Memphis. He's really impressive per minute. Like his just like rate stats for his steal rate and block rate are really impressive. And he's just a great athlete. He's just like a really, really good athlete. He just doesn't have a lot of offense. Like, he's going to score off cuts and in transition. And right now he can't shoot. He doesn't have a lot of like sort of individual creation stuff, doesn't have a tight handle. He's going to make his impact being a defender. My thinking here is that you just can never have enough 6'8 really good athletes who can defend. And if you're taking a flyer on 36, start with someone who's going to jump off the board, athletic wise, and then try to mold from there, kind of in the Greg Brown world. Minott and Greg Brown was a higher recruit coming out of high school than Minott, but 1 year at Memphis, Josh Minott probably didn't get to showcase all he could be. Kendall Brown was, he was on a really good Baylor team that got after it and was really athletic. 9.7 points, 4.9 boards, just shy of 2 assists, a steal, and just under half a block. He's also just like, a non-shooter and going to be a real project on offense to get there. But again, like real defensive potential. I have seen Kendall Brown early on in the sort of mock drafts that I was looking at, Kendall Brown mocked up in the teens. He has really slipped down the board since then. I think he could be a first-round guy, but if he's there at 36, I think he's worth considering for sure. Those are kind of like the two, if Portland just needs sort of defensive prospects because they need to get better defensively, and guys that sort of fit the mold for the future of the league, right? 6'8" athletes who can really defend. Switchable, versatile defenders. That is the most valuable thing. I mean, you want them to also, like, the most valuable thing would be like a switchable 6'8" defender who could really handle and pass. Andre Iguodala, right? Like prime Iguodala would be the best, really valuable. But short of that, if you're drafting the second round, you're going to draft players that are probably not particularly polished. And those are two names I certainly like. Other two that I like, these are players that I've kind of grown, like while I've been doing draft research, I have poured more into the draft this year than ever in my life. I never would have kind of watched YouTube videos of second round prospects in the past. But one, I love y'all and I want to make Locked On Blazers a wonderful show. And two, the Blazers just haven't played a meaningful game of basketball in a while. And it gave me a little more space to do this in the off season because this is really important. And the two names that have kind of, I've come to know as like my second round draft guys are Ryan Rollins, point guard from Toledo, and Bryce McGowan, a wing from Nebraska. Ryan Rollins is 6'4", but he has a 6'10" wingspan. He's just like a really long-armed athlete. He doesn't shoot. I should say this before I get too deep in this. I learned this by watching YouTube videos, listening to Locked On NBA Big Board with Raphael Barlow, and reading Sam Vecini's draft guide as well as the Ringer's draft guide. And ESPN's wonderful draft stuff too. Like I learned some of this is like I watched a little bit of video and I'm like, ooh, that's fun, and learn more about them. And a couple of these guys will mention I saw them play in the NCAA tournament. But like for Rollins and Bryce McGowan, these are kind of names that came up while I was doing draft research. And then when I leaned more into learning about them, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm excited. Ryan Rollins, 6'10" wingspan, doesn't shoot, but is from three, but is a pull-up mid-range maestro. His mid-range pull-up highlights are fun as hell. You go under a screen, Ryan Rollins pulls up and hits a jumper in your face from 15 feet. Gets to the rim really well. Isn't, from what I've read, like not like a really high-level passer, but certainly a capable one. And just like a dude with who can get himself into the paint, get himself to his spots. And if he develops more as a shooter with his frame, 6'4" with the super long arms, like he's a really intriguing guard because of, he has some real skills, like some real polish on offense. And already the pull-up shooting from the mid-range and his ability to get to the rim and have some fun creative finishes make him a really intriguing player. Like I'm a Rollins believer. He played 2 years at Toledo, averaged last season 18.9, 6 boards, 3.5 assists, almost 2 steals. His highlight package is floaters and layups. It's a whole bunch of fun and a whole bunch of mid-range jumpers. He's 3-point shooting will be the swing skill for him. Bryce McGowan is like a hot draft name. Just a straight up hot draft name. He can play. He's 6'7" wing from Nebraska, averaged 16.8 points, 5.2 boards, and 1.4 assists in his alone season at Nebraska. He's a slasher who doesn't shoot it well and doesn't really pass much, but he can get to his spots, and he's the right size at 6'7". Like this is. I think he can play. Like just like from reading about him and watching a couple YouTube videos. Shout out to Hoops Intellect on YouTube. I'm a Bryce McGowan believer. If he's there at 36, he might be my new Huckleberry. He's my new Ben Mathurin. Like where I'm like, okay, I like this dude. There's the real concerns for him. Like he doesn't, like I said, is not much of a shooter or a passer, but can really score and get to the rack and as like a sort of second side athlete. But the defense is a concern for him. Like, what is he going to be like as a defender? And I think that's, for me, the big question mark. Like, if you're that size and on the wing, but you're not much of a team defender, you're not the ideal. The ideal player at his size is not a slasher scorer. It's a shooter defender, and he kind of bucks the trend. But I'm enamored with the Bryce McGowan highlights. I'm a fan. Go big red. I got 4 other names, mostly big men, and I'll share those with you in the third segment of guys to know in the second round. Some second round prospects that I will have my eye on draft night. But before we get there, let's talk Built Bar. The best tasting protein bar on the market. They got a bunch of fun flavors, including a new one. It's Mud Pie Puff. It's chocolatey and marshmallowy and really, really money. Like, the Mud Pie flavor is real solid. Ate one literally earlier this afternoon, prior to recording this here podcast. But what I like about Built Bar is that they taste great, but moreover is that they pack a punch. Peep the macros. On average, 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar and 4 net carbs. That's your average Built Bar. So find a flavor you like and go ahead and get yourself something that tastes great and gives you the fuel you need. Head to Built.com and see all that they got. If you're not into mud pie and the marshmallowy flavors, you're going to find something that suits your fancy. And while you're there, save yourself some money. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. We got more names in the second round. Got a couple big guys, 3 big guys to close out the program. But first, let's talk Dereon Seabron from NC State. A guy I legitimately really like. I'm a Carolina guy. I watch ACC hoops. My family, I got some NC State family. Shout out to my Uncle Matt. Matt, if you're listening, go Wuffies. You probably hate me saying that, but for real. But Dereon Seabron is a dude who cannot shoot, and averaged 17 a game in the ACC. He just got into the paint whenever he wanted. No one could stay in front of him. He's a 6'6" wing. He's got long arms. He's got a handle for someone his size. He can just get into the paint. He can just get into the paint. He did it against Carolina, did it against Duke, he did it against Miami, he did it against tournament teams in the ACC when I watched him play. Dude is just absolutely gets to his spots. I really think he can be a good pro. He can't score, and in a Power 5 or can't shoot. And in a Power 5 conference, he scored 17 a game. Like, without a jump shot. You do not have to respect his jump shot, and yet he's manipulating pick and rolls, getting to where he wants to go. Average 8 rebounds and over 3 assists. Basically a steal and a half a game as well. He can pass a little bit. He's not like an elite passer, but he can pass a little bit because he can get into the paint and he knows it. He can see the backline defense come help and make passes. Like, if you watch a breakdown of him, you'll see him jump stop 2 feet in the paint. As soon as you help off the corner, he's finding that corner. Like, because he can look at the defender in front of him and say, well, you're not going to stay in front of me. I'm going to get where I want to go. He can read second level defenses. And if he ever develops any semblance of a jump shooter, it's a terrible 3-point shooter in college. He's an NBA player and a long-term NBA player. I'm a big time believer. He's just a straight up non-shooter who's a bucket. I love weird players. I think my favorite type of player is guys who kind of just like buck what we think is right in the league, and Seabron is just bucks that. He's just like, oh, I'm supposed to shoot because this is modern NBA basketball? No way. I'm just going to get to where I'm going to get to my spots. I love deliberate basketball players, and he's deliberate and fluid at the same time. Like, he's stubborn because he's going to drive. He's a slasher. But he's fluid athlete who can cram on you if you give him space to do so. He's got a package with some crafty finishes, and like I said, he's a terror in transition as well. Like, Seabron I really like. He's not ideal for the Blazers because I think he's like a 2 probably in the NBA to begin his professional journey, but at 36, I would be super into him. Last three guys on my list for the Blazers as second round targets are all big guys. And the one that a lot of you really have sent me, Christian Coloco from the University of Arizona. That is the name that I absolutely get more than any others from listeners who are like, what about Arizona's Christian Koloko? 7-footer, 7'5" wingspan, spent 3 years at Arizona last year, averaged 12.6 points, 7.3 rebounds, a little less than 1.5 assists, and almost 3 blocks a game, 2.8 blocks a game. Led the Pac-12 in block shots. He's a defender, like just an elite rim protector, rim shot alterer type of defender. Like he's a dude who's going to create havoc around the rim. He's a roller on offense. Like he doesn't do much else. He's not a passer. He's not a, all of you, when I was watching little clips of him, like his highlights out of the pick and roll are him finishing at the rim, him getting himself to the rim. He's not making high level reads with pick and roll stuff. And he's not a post up guy. Like he's a lob threat. He's a roll downhill guy. He's a find himself in space and an offensive rebound putback guy. He's got some fun putback dunks. The concern for me is that I think his frame is a little thin to be like a true center immediately in the league. Admittedly, I only watched Arizona play 2 games this year, and I didn't really like Koloko. Like that is, I loved Ben Mathurin and like have been, freaking on that train from early on, and have hitched my wagon for better or for worse to Mathurin, but I didn't really, in the 2 games I watched, I didn't really love Koloko. He didn't stand out to me, but he's a name that if he's there at 36 is absolutely worth considering. The next guy on the list is Ismael Kamagate, who played for Paris Basket in the French League, in the highest level of the French League last season. He spent the previous 2 years in the second tier of the French League and then moved up to the top tier of the French League and was averaged 11 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks. He's just a great athlete. Like he worked out for the Blazers in Portland. They brought him in to work out. He's a great athlete. I think he's a project, right? Like he doesn't have a lot of feel and doesn't have a lot of polish, but he's 6'11" with a 7'4" wingspan, and he has some ability to stay in front of smaller players on the perimeter. Like he's got defensive versatility to protect the rim and guard in space. You just he's probably a ways away from being he's probably a full year away from being an NBA contributor. Like if you draft him, it's a wait and develop him behind the scenes type of thing, play him some spot minutes here and there, but like he's not an early contributor in his rookie season. But there just aren't that many dudes in the world who are his size with his athletic profile. That is the intriguing part, right? 7'4" wingspan, can guard in space, obviously block shots at a high level. If he develops, some offensive stuff, then he becomes a player. If he just becomes a lob threat and an elite defensive force, he's probably a long-term pro. But again, that's those are a lot of steps. The offensive polish is a long way away. You have 0 offensive moves and you don't have a lot of offensive skills, and yet you're playing in the highest level in France. It's because you're special, and he's special athletically. And I think that's Kamagate I would be excited about him at 36 or 57. I don't think he'll last to 57. In fact, I think he could go as high as the late first round from what I've read about him, in the 20s. So if he's there at 36, you might just have to make your move if you want him, because I think the intrigue with him, although he's obviously a project, is really high. The last guy on my list is someone that I just straight up really loved watching in the NCAA tournament, and that's Jaylin Williams from Arkansas. Spent 2 years at Arkansas, and his sophomore year he averaged 10.9 points, 9.8 boards, 2.6 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.1 blocks. Did a little bit of everything. I just straight up loved watching this dude in the NCAA tournament. He is such a good passer for someone his size. He shoots a little bit from deep. I don't love the jump shooting numbers are gross. And from the little bit I watched, didn't really look like a guy who should be taking jumpers. A lot of times he just wouldn't even consider the rim. He'd catch it, 20 feet and be like, I'm going to run dribble handoffs. But he can really pass. He is a very skilled passer. And I love bigs. I love bigs who can pass. And on defense, he was rugged. He was right up there against Mark Williams, who he was bigger than. He's, hanging tough with, hanging tough with the Zags like he was, and their front line like he's Gonzaga like he Duke can play. I like. This was like just an NCAA tournament guy who had no idea, right? Like I'm not a college basketball guy, no idea going in. And then by the end of the afternoon watching him, I'm like, I love Jaylin Williams. This is my favorite player in college basketball. Love him. I'll just be a straight up fan of his wherever. If he's in the league, I will root for Jaylin Williams because I straight up really like him. He might not be much of an offensive player, and I think there's legitimate concerns about his athleticism at the next level. But the IQ stuff, like feel, I'm such a feel guy. Like that's my biggest thing when I watch players. I'm like, does this dude like just intuitively know where to be? Like that's why I was really high on Trendon Watford early in the season. I was like, oh, this guy kind of gets it. Like he has a good feel. Jaylin Williams just has a great feel on offense and a really smart passer and a good feel on how to be a competitive defender playing against, some high first round picks when I watched him a couple times in the NCAA tournament, maybe 3 of their games in the NCAA tournament. I like him. I like McGowan, Jaylin Williams, and Dereon Seabron are like, those are my dudes. Those are my second round dudes for sure. Those are, if the Blazers end up with any of those 3, you can tweet at me or email me, comment in the YouTube channel and say, they got your guy, because they will have got my guy. Those are 3 that I'm a fan of. Those are 8 names to know. The Blazers have 36 and 57 in the draft. They are, probably going to use one of those picks. There's a chance they end up, trade back and end up with another second rounder. And these guys might be a little deep in the range, but if they're there at 36, I think all 8 of these are worth considering. And if any of them are around at 57, you snap them up and keep it moving. That is today's show. Tomorrow's show, everything you need to know about the NBA draft. Everything. I am going to listen to a cajillion podcasts. I'm going to read every rumor. I'm going to read every friggin' post on r/Rip City. I'm going to be all over the internet, and then I'm going to bring it to you. Everything you need to know. Everything we absolutely know. So when you wake up on the draft morning, you'll have all the latest mock drafts. You'll have all the latest rumors. You will be armed with every bit of information you could possibly need heading into the draft. And then Thursday night, the draft happens, and the world's going to change for the Blazers, probably dramatically. They're either going to end up with 3 rookies or some combination of something else. The team is going to look and feel different come Thursday night. So Friday show, we will have all of that for you. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. We're going to have a ton as a network content around the NBA draft. We'll have a live draft show. We'll have every host reacting to all the picks. It's going to be a ton of fun. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you subscribe to this show on wherever you're listening. If you're a new listener, welcome. I'm super happy to have you. If you're a longtime listener, I'm also super happy to have you. Thanks for coming back. Everybody, make this show your first listen every single day. Come back for more. 2 really fun shows to close out the week. And the most exciting day of the NBA offseason. The NBA draft is just a ton of fun. I love it. I haven't always loved it. I'm learning to love it this year. And I'm really excited to see what the Blazers do. I'm ready. I'm kind of impatient, quite frankly. I'm ready for it to go ahead and happen. But we'll have one show in between there with everything you need to know. So make sure you come back and listen to that one. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.